Good morning to all of our friends who are joining us early on this Saturday morning live. If you're tuning in via LinkedIn or via YouTube, welcome. I'm really excited about today's guests. We have Lisa Johnson and Chris Berry from Been There, Got Out. First things first, Lisa and Chris, good morning, and thank
Hi.
you for being with me.
Good morning to you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So, Lisa Johnson and Chris Berry started Been There, Got Out after their own, shall we say, traumatic experiences navigating divorce themselves. They are now life partners and business partners, supporting families as they navigate divorce, coaching families, and helping them just, again, navigate the challenges that come not only with divorce, but especially with high conflict divorce. So, the first portion of our conversation today is going to be about strategic communication. And then for any of you who are members of Parent Tween Village or would like to become members of Parent Tween Village, we're going to have a second exclusive conversation for our members talking about how to take effective steps toward, steps toward effective parenting plans. So first things first, Lisa, your big point to me when we were discussing today's plan was no undocumented communication. Like if we could take that and like write it in the stars in the sky, your point is no undocumented communication. Let's just start from there. Tell me what you got. Why? All of that.
Okay. So, like you said, Chris and I only deal with high conflict situations. And so we're always conscious that our clients have the invisible audience watching, that they're under this invisible microscope of the court. And so we want to make sure that they are what we call presenting properly, especially in communication. And the best way to do that is in writing. So we always feel like whatever you put out into the world is going to become an exhibit. And we want you to present as the best co-parent ever. So everything needs to be documented. All of our clients in our community that we work with, we say, don't have any more verbal conversations. We have to put it in writing so we can preserve the record, basically. The other thing is that there's a certain power dynamic in these relationships. And so even when you separate from your ex, it's hard to extract yourself from that. So when you have physical conversations, even if it's not in person, but over the phone, you still react and you still have to think really quickly. So when you're communicating in writing, it gives you a chance to pause and really consider what you're going to say, because you need to, instead of doing what we call popping off. So everything has to be put in writing. And we also, with strategic communication, that's what we call all of this. We want to do what's called turning hearsay into evidence. So if you come into court and you say, well, we had this happen, or we had this conversation, like nobody knows if that's true. But when something happens, you can get into that through communicating with your ex in writing, whether it's over text, email, or a parenting app. And you can turn it into documentation for the record, where it becomes admissible, rather than much more than you just saying, oh, this happened, or here my journal says this, where it's just you saying it. Because when you put it in writing and you have basically a conversation with your ex that other people can look at, your ex has the opportunity to respond. So it's not hearsay. It's part of the record, like I said. So no undocumented communication.
Well, and my understanding is many of the parenting apps that exist, and let me actually just double check. You said not only no undocumented communication, but what's your take on texting versus a parenting app? And then I'll ask the question that I had. Chris, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So texting is okay. There are ways, I mean, it's a lot better than verbal. Our problem is with the verbal or the phone, where there is no record at all, right?
Right.
Where would they, maybe the parties agree to swap weekends or something in a quick like verbal exchange, and then all of a sudden, no, I don't agree to that, right? So if it's at least in writing in some form, that's like half the battle right there. But it's a lot easier, like text you can fake, especially now with some of the things with AI and different. A lot of for whatever reason, a lot of our clients' exes are pretty skilled with technology, and we've seen like completely fabricated text exchanges. I mean, it can be, that's pretty extreme, but it happens. So I think maybe this is what you were going to say, but a lot of the parenting apps, they keep track of like exactly what was sent. You can't go back and change it. I'll even say email, right? So text would be at least a minimum bare standard, then email. But if you send me an email, Clarissa, and I reply, I can change what you said in a lot of the email program. I can go down and switch something out and change your words. And then we go a few iterations down, you never notice. And then it's submitted as evidence. And you're like, I don't think I ever said that. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
email's better than text, but way better than email is any of the parenting apps that'll keep, you can't go back. It's all like lockdown, right? You can't edit something that happened in the past. A record is kept of when it was opened, how many times it was opened, when it was most recently opened, all of those things. They could all support like, hey, I never saw that. Oh yeah, you saw it like 3 times, including this morning. So I'm surprised you don't remember it. Yeah.
Well, and it's my understanding that, and I don't have, gratefully, personal experience with the apps, but many of them not only record the written communication, but they record all verbal and or like phone communication and or video communication, which is then, I presume, also admissible in court.
Sure, and especially if the video is like like they call them FaceTimes, right? If you have like a video chat with your child when your child's with the other parent, that's recorded as well. So if the other side's misbehaving during your calls with them on their parenting time, with the children on their parenting time, or they're claiming that you're misbehaving on their calls, or you're not available, you're blocking contact, you're not allowing the calls, and you'd say, well, no, look, here's a tracker, you talked for 15 minutes the other day.
Sure. Yeah. So there really is no reason not to have any undocumented communication, right, Lisa?
Right. I mean, a lot of it involves the ability to restrain yourself.
And if you have undocumented communication, if there is a verbal exchange, we always, we say don't do it, but if you do it, follow up. If there's anything substantial, follow up by sending a message later and saying, hey, today we said this.
Right.
There's going to be some kind of there's going to be some kind of in-person communication, presumably, at least at the point of children going from one parent to the other when you're meeting at the library or the police station or wherever it is for there's going to be some in-person contact, at least, presumably some communication. So documenting that makes sense. So Lisa, you've mentioned something here that I don't even know what this is. You said the power of universal agreement. And in my brain, I'm like, okay, with the people y'all work with, agreement in the first place must be challenging. How the heck do we get to universal agreement? So clearly I need some education. Tell me more.
Okay. So we developed this model that Chris calls FRAC to show how we teach how to strategically communicate. And the A in it stands for agreement or universal agreement. And sometimes we also call it the anchor. And it's basically aligning yourself with not just the values of the court, but human values, so that you can sort of anchor something that your child needs, because most of these communications have to do with children when there's parenting or when a custody battle is happening, because that's what Chris and I deal with more than anything. But you want to have them anchored to a value that they cannot say that's not true. So the dynamic in these relationships, because our clients' exes tend to have some kind of mental illness and they hate feeling controlled. So when we communicate with normal people, I should say, when you offer an opinion or a suggestion about something with your kids, like that's fine. That's how people have a dialogue. But when you're dealing with someone who's got some kind of personality disorder, when you offer an opinion, they feel like you're controlling them. They don't want you to say, this is how we should do things, or this is what we think. The universal agreement is something that everyone can agree on, that the courts love. So for example, one of the universal agreements that we have our clients use in strategic communication all the time, especially when their ex is like railing at them and talking about what a terrible parent they are, because that's what we see all the time, is to put a line in the communication back, like, I'm sure we can both agree how important it is to shield our children from any conflict between us. So that is what we call a universal agreement. It's something that you're saying we can agree. So you're telling them we both agree. So they kind of hate that you're saying, oh, we, like, you're speaking for them, but it's something that they cannot disagree with, because who would ever say, no, I want to involve the kids in the conflict? Because that shows something's wrong with you as a parent. And it also flies directly into the face of the court's values, which wants to see parents trying to cooperate. Even if you know your ex is totally uncooperative, you want to sprinkle things in there that show that you are focused on the kids, that right? Both of you are these kids' parents. So of course, both of you would want the same thing, right? Like we both want to shield our kids from the conflict between us, even though in their heads they're like, I don't want to do that, but I can't say that I disagree with it. So as we start to drop these anchors, another one that we see that we use all the time is with therapy. Our clients access block therapy all the time. Our clients can't say our kid needs therapy because then they'll go against it. So we'll put in a universal agreement like, I'm sure we can both agree how important our child's mental health is. They can't say no, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to say, I disagree with what that statement. They want to, but they can't. Because again, we are performing, we always say you're writing to your ex, but you're writing for the invisible audience. So there's always going to be eyes on this, and you need to make sure that you are at least presenting as someone trying to work with your co-parent, even if they're impossible. So that's the universal question.
There's 2 points that come out of that for me with my background in communication and coaching is it's presumptive. It's, of course, we know that we care about this. We're both the parents. Of course, we know that, like, I'm just presuming that that's like what any rational, loving parent would want. And then it's continuing to prioritize the child's best interests.
Yep.
Chris, any other points on that?
Well, you made me think my background's in sales, and we always talk about like the presumptive close, right? Not like if you do this deal, then we'll do X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, when we get started, we will do this. Like this is what we're doing. Of course we're doing it, right?
Why wouldn't we do it?
Yeah.
Of course we wouldn't, because any judge that reads this is going to think you're maybe not the most cooperative parent if you disagree with me.
Right.
As opposed to saying the judge is going to think you're Looney Tunes. That's not positive and productive and forward moving. So,
yeah.
All right. So then we've talked about the fact that all of this is admissible, and we're talking about doing everything that we can, of course, to prioritize the children's best interest, but also writing for that invisible audience out there. So then, Lisa, there's also the expectation that we're going to be back in court somehow, some way, someday, right? And so I know that you've said, again, it's all admissible. How do we present the best possible exhibits for that return to court when that happens, not if that happens, I suppose.
Exactly. Yes, Clarissa, we don't say if, we say when in our community. So again, like the correspondence, the written correspondence between you and your ex is, in our opinion, the most powerful exhibit that you could submit, especially when you're dealing with a custody issue. One of the things that the court really looks for when they're determining custody is the level of cooperation between the parents or lack thereof. So we want to make sure that you are always presenting as the best co-parent ever. We know your ex is impossible, but you don't have to do, you're still like rational and child-centered, hopefully. So you'd have to do your part. We say it's like you have clean hands, and we want to keep the record clean. And so again, you're writing to your ex, but you're writing for that invisible audience. You always want to remember the audience, but you don't want to pander to the audience. So one of the things that people will say is like, they'll be writing to their ex and they'll say, oh, blah, blah, it's in our child's best interest. But like, don't ever say that. Do not say it's in our child's best interest, because nobody talks like that. It's obvious that you're trying to make some kind of statement, and like what best interest, like what are you talking about? So and one thing that Chris and I teach is like, what are the actual best interest factors so we can relate to them? Like instead of saying it's in our child's best interest to stay at my house during the week, you'd say something like, in order to preserve our kids' school routine, it might be easier. What do you think? Sort of thing. So anyway, like I said, writing for that invisible audience, showing the court that you are at least able to attempt to co-parent with that person. You turn hearsay into evidence, but it also starts turning the power dynamic around in your relationship when you're using strategic communication, because what you're really doing is documenting your ex's patterns of behavior over time and the impact that it has on your child, and especially on your relationship with your child. And I say that because the term parental alienation flies freely all over our community, where our clients are often falsely being accused of it. So we want to make sure that they're doing everything right and not hitting those factors that could get them in trouble. So by doing like excellent strategic communication, your ex will never get their talons into that kind of argument where, if they don't get their way with the schedule, they say, well, it's because my ex alienated me from the kids. And actually, Chris, you don't even know this. I was meeting with one of our clients yesterday who has to go back to court. She's been out for quite a while. And in the past, when she was dealing with court, she was freaking out because her main goal had been to show her ex's abuse towards her. Like that was the thing. I have to show the courts like how bad he is. And so when we started working together, we gave her what's called an image makeover, like an image rehabilitation. We're like, we don't want to focus on his abuse towards you because this is a custody issue. Let's focus on your daughter and let's change the way your voice basically and how you're communicating. So now they're going back to court. It's been a couple of years and she was like so happy on our call because she goes, I look so squeaky clean. I have nothing to worry about. I was like, I told you. So we knew you were going back and all of your communication is amazing. And so every exhibit, like I can't obviously get into the details of what the issues are, but everything you have is well organized. It's ready to go. It shows how he really doesn't have a legal leg to stand on because you're aware of those best interest factors. You picked a couple of the themes and you have communication that over the last couple of years, so patterns over time of how you've co-parented with this person. And so she has a lot of confidence going back, whereas a lot of people are terrified. And I'm thrilled because she's got this awesome, bunch of evidence, like a bunch of really clear exhibits that are going to fit directly with what she's trying to argue.
Everything she might show or the other side might show will just prove that everything she's doing is in complete alignment with what the court is looking for, is respectful of the relationship between the child and the other parent, is cooperative, supportive, just trying to solve problems, just trying to work with this person.
I was going to ask you, Chris, if you had other thoughts. And so I'm going to ask if there's anything that you'd like to add on. I appreciate that perspective. I know that there's a lot of families that navigate this and go, I just want to make sure that I look as good in court as I can.
And people don't realize what makes them look bad in court. That's the mistake they see all the time. We see all the time is that they're following some kind of advice that they think is right. For example, gray rocking. We just had a call with someone who was like, I'm doing everything right. I'm gray rocking my ex about my kids. I'm keeping my boundaries. And we're like, no, like you can't behave like that. Like that communication that you think you're doing so great at, like you're jeopardizing your custody.
Ooh, tell me a little more. I've heard that term, but tell me your perspective on that.
Of gray rocking, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's a great, I don't want to get too far off topic, but it's really an important thing to understand is that having support, especially in divorce in general, but in high conflict divorce, especially, you need support, and not just friends and family because they don't understand the situation, but a therapist, and most best is like a trauma informed therapist, somebody who understands this kind of thing. But even then, so to get your support that way is so important, but sometimes sound therapeutic advice conflicts with sound legal advice. So a therapist will say, oh, you should go no contact. You should, the therapist's goal is to protect the client, not to help the client build a case, right? So you need to take a holistic approach. So yes, you listen to the therapist and help in your recovery, but some of it may not be the best thing to do for your case. So when they say go no contact or gray rock, and you ask what gray rock is. So gray rock is not quite no contact, but a very absolutely bare minimum way of communicating. You're not showing any emotion. You're not like, there's nothing unnecessary. It's like bare bones. And it can come across as standoffish if when it's presented. That sort of approach can make it look like you're not really willing to engage at all with this person. And everybody kind of understands that if you're going to co-parent, there has to be some engagement, right? So it's gray rock is sound therapeutically, but it needs to be toned down a bit, and you need to take a little bit of a different approach when you're in a high conflict custody battle.
And yet I'm also hearing back to what you were saying, Lisa, of like, one of the benefits of the app, and maybe this is probably the biggest benefit of the app perhaps is there's gray rocking, as you're defining it, of like zero engagement, zero emotion. And Lisa, you were talking earlier about the apps giving you the space to pause before you respond so you don't pop off.
Right.
Right. So having a middle ground, not necessarily becoming as emotionally embroiled as you might have historically or might want to, recognizing there's a danger there, but also not going so far to the other side that there's still zero emotion or zero engagement.
Yeah, but the app is a tool, and AI is a tool. These are not going to do it for you. That's just the method you use, the medium to communicate. And it's so interesting because there's a lot of apps out there that people are using. They're like, oh, this is like, I'm going to use Chat GPT and it's going to work. Like, it's a tool, but it doesn't create your case. And we meet so many people years after divorcing that are living with a sense of dread and terror over communicating with their exes, that are still using an app. So the app isn't going to fix it. It's all the other stuff in the background.
Right.
Oh, I had my app set up to make a special noise when my ex sent me a message, and it was whenever I'd hear that noise, I would get a knot in my stomach. I would get like, oh my God, what is it now? A lot of times it was when they're very intentional in how they communicate. There's a thing called the Friday night bomb where they'll send you.
We made up that thing. There's not a thing called it, Chris. We made it.
There is now.
Yeah, where they'll send you something inflammatory or controversial, or I'm taking you back to court, or some kind of thing that they know you so well. They studied you so intensely. They know just how to get under your skin and push your buttons. And they'll do it right, like when you're about to go away for a week, romantic weekend with your new partner. That's why we say Friday night bomb, right? Because it'll come on Friday night and ruin your whole weekend.
Or before vacation, before a special occasion. It's just like designed so that you can't have a good time.
Sure. Awesome. I mean, not awesome, but awesome conversation.
It starts to get awesome again when you understand what it is, and you can start to, like, I don't get that knot in my stomach anymore, right? Because, but I'm 10 years out, so.
Right. Well, and it's almost like oh, thanks for playing the game. You're just proving the fact that I really do know that this is the game that you're playing. I understand you, and I understand what this is, and I have more awareness now. And so that more awareness means that I have the control over my response better.
Right. Like when it's predictable, you know what to expect, you know how to deal with it.
Absolutely. Chris, Lisa, Lisa, you and I have known each other for how long now? Quite some time. Chris, you and I have gotten to know each other a bit. Thank you for the work that you do. We could talk, as I say to so many of my guests, we could talk forever. You guys do such good work. Lisa, how do people find you when they need your services?
Super easy. You can just look up Been There, Got Out, and you'll find us everywhere. You can go to our website, schedule a call. You could follow us on social media, especially Instagram. We have a YouTube channel, a podcast. Our book came out, which is also called Been There, Got Out. We'll have another one coming out soon, a course, but just Been There, Got Out. You'll find us everywhere. And we're really easy to reach. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to wrap up this portion of our conversation. And then we are, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to head over to Parent Tween Village, have a conversation there with our members about parenting plans. And this is kind of like the next step of some of what we've been talking about. So much of this communication is going to be around parenting plans, or based on parenting plans, the ones they're court ordered, right? And so continuing this discussion to try to set up the best possible parenting plans to help facilitate the situation for however long you've got. Chris, you said you don't get the knot in your stomach anymore. I'm sure that there are families that do. So hopefully the next part of our conversation can help minimize that knot in the stomach once we've gotten through the whole custody process. So Chris, Lisa, thank you. And we will see you in Parent Tween Village soon.